Welcome to the Franchise Woman podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships forged. I'm Rebecca Monet, CEO and Chief Scientist at Zorko Profiles, along with my co-host, community advocate, speaker, author, and entrepreneur, Tracy Kawa. Our special guest today is Pillar to Post franchisee Coree Rivers. Coree Rivers is originally from Brooklyn, New York, and has been an executive assistant, chief of staff for years in several different industries. Coree moved out to California a year and a half ago and completely started over. She started her business and built her network from scratch. Coree believes there's a lot of room for women to consider careers in service industries previously dominated by men. Coree, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here.
Hi, Corey. Brooklyn in the house, times two.
Yes.
Times two. I'm from Brooklyn as well. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your childhood, your upbringing, maybe what led you to franchise.
Yeah, I am a Brooklyn girl. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. I am the oldest of 5 children, and we grew up in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. So not the best neighborhood. I mean, growing up, but it's way different now. But I grew up with a lot of very strong influencers in my life, not necessarily, I guess, successful in the world standards, but very much successful in the aspect of family and building legacies. And so I grew up very much looking to my mother as she raised the 5 of us as best she could, and instilled very deep leadership skills in me and my siblings, and taught us how to always consider what it is that you're doing and how it impacts others, and how you can build for the next day and the next day, not just for right now. So I'm very appreciative and pay homage to her for that.
Beautiful.
It is beautiful. It's interesting that your mother was teaching you something that as a society we're not very good at anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that's to think about the future and how our decisions affect our future and our behavior. So sounds like she was always thinking about legacy and down the road and doing what is right and best to get whatever outcomes you have. So tell us a little bit more about that childhood. You were telling us offline that you're the eldest of 5 children.
Yes.
How did that play a role in who you became?
I mean, it plays a role. My siblings and I are actually best friends today. But that wasn't the case when we were younger. Like you could imagine, there's a whole bunch of emotions, a whole bunch of fighting. No one had their own room. So it was always fighting over things. But one key thing that we were always taught was to manage your emotions, right? Like you could feel a certain way, but that didn't give you the right to act in that way, right? Like you could be mad at your brother, but that doesn't give you the right not to speak to him or not to come up with a solution and move forward. So we were never given the option to be mad and run into our room and lock the door. We always had to work things out. And if we couldn't, then we were, my mom had this cute little thing. She would get a big t-shirt and put the 2 of us that couldn't agree into that t-shirt, and we couldn't come out until we were laughing. So, those things that you hate as a kid and you're just like, Mom, this is stupid. Like, why do I have to say sorry? And, I don't really mean it. As an adult, it has propelled me in so many different areas, because I realize people who don't have that foundation and cannot simple conflict resolution, just with stuff that was just ingrained in me as a small child. So I love hard, I forgive easy, and I move forward.
Aww. I love how it sounds like your mom taught you all of these leadership skills, emotional intelligence skills, which you hardly come by today. I have to say, it's more It's usually the reverse where people aren't learning those and need to catch up.
Right.
It sounds like she taught you those. And she also taught you team building with that big t-shirt. I mean, those are incredible skills that we use in business today.
Yes. So it wasn't, we didn't have conversations so much as, Corey, what do you want to be when you grow up? It was, Corey, what did you do nice for your sister today? Or, what did you do in school today that made mommy proud? So those are the conversations, and it just really structured the way that I think today. So.
Beautiful.
Wow. What a powerful thing. What did you do today at school that would make mommy proud?
Yeah.
What did you do today with your sisters or your brother, or that you could be proud of, or brought you closer? Those are powerful questions, rather than do you want to be a doctor, lawyer, or Indian chief?
Right.
I wished I had that kind of upbringing. Right?
Yeah, I appreciate it today much more than I did when I was younger. But
yeah, I can see these two kids in this big t-shirt that one minute ago we're fighting and arguing over some silly nothingness thing, and all of a sudden they're stuck in this t-shirt.
Right.
Like laughing and rolling their eyes.
Right.
Oh, I gotta forgive them before I can get
I love how you say love hard and forgive easy.
Yes, yes.
Truly.
Yeah, it really does. Professionally and personally, it propels me to places where I wouldn't get otherwise. A lot of people get hung up on simple things and just cannot move or see forward at all. And it affects your vision. It affects, your being present in the moment, and it affects your being able to see opportunities as they present themselves, because opportunities don't scream at you. They usually whisper. But if you're there mad, or if you don't, you're stuck in your own perspective, you'll miss it.
Wow. So true. And which is why it goes back to what you had learned as a child, is the ability to control your emotion, which is that emotional and social intelligence Tracy was talking about. So you could be fully present, fully aware, and recognize not just how others were feeling or thinking, but you were able to have opportunities be highlighted because you're not caught up in
Absolutely
stuff, right? You're not caught up in stuff. So take us a little bit further. This beautiful upbringing in Brooklyn with your 4 other siblings and your mama. And then you went into a career. So tell us a little bit of that progression and how you ended up becoming executive assistant, chief of staff, all of those kinds of things.
Yeah, I actually started because I worked, a friend of my mom's was a lawyer. He had his own practice. So in college, I worked for him as sort of an admin assistant, and did a lot of the clerical work and worked under him in his office while I was in school. And he showed me a lot, and he, I kind of liked that, he would trust me with really big things. And I'm like, whoa, like, you really want me to take care of that? Like, I don't know any of this stuff. And he's like, yeah, you'll figure it out. And so that kind of piqued my interest for working under these really, what I thought were powerful people with a lot of responsibility. And, he trusted me, I guess, partly because he knew my family, but that trust really, I valued it and I treasured it. So when he gave me things, I worked even harder to make sure that I carried it through to the end, and if I had questions, I went back to him. So that kind of piqued my interest into the admin world. And then as I worked a few years as an administrative assistant, once I graduated, I became an executive assistant and fell in love with the role.
Wow. It's almost like a chicken or an egg question. Like, were you entrusted to figure things out and handed these huge cases or projects because you had that basis and emotional intelligence and that clear ability to think and that level head, right? Or did you develop that by being handed these projects, or did they just go hand in hand?
I think it definitely goes hand in hand. And again, my first experience in the admin world was with someone who knew my family. So I think he trusted me more just by virtue of that. And, as I proved myself, the tasks just got bigger and bigger. And it actually made me nervous because I was like, how is he trusting me with this? Like, I could totally screw this whole thing up.
Oh.
It made me trust myself more as well. Because I'm like, well, if he's going to let me do this, then, I must have the power to figure it out. And I just figured it out. And if I had questions, he made it so that, it wasn't like I was scolded if I didn't know. He was like, well, here's how you find the information. Here's how you find the answer. And, I don't always know myself, but this is how I find out. So I became really comfortable with asking questions where maybe I wasn't at first. But then also knowing that even those who are far ahead of me in leadership, they don't always know themselves, but there's always a path to finding out. So it was really a great beginning opportunity for me into the corporate world, which can be very cutthroat and just kind of, know what you know. Do what you can do to the best of your ability. And if you don't know, ask questions, and there's always a way to figure it out. So
what great advice, not only for a first-time job seeker, but anyone along that career path. But this component of trust is such a powerful thing. He trusted your character. He trusted your upbringing. He knew that you would make him proud and that you would do what was necessary to find the answer, do the job well, even if you hadn't done it before. So trust is such a big part of mentoring and leadership and helping people go to that next level. He also gave you room to possibly make mistakes or not know the answers. He didn't expect you to be here when this is a first time kind of role that you were playing. So this trust, oh my goodness, I cannot imagine having that as a first job where someone has to constantly double check. They just trust you.
And I guess, as I'm older, I think about it more and I'm just like, wow, like, yeah, these people really did trust me with this stuff. But these were things that were second nature to me, I guess, just, and again, my mom wasn't perfect, but she did make sure that we had those core values, right? So not that I never told a lie or never did anything. I was just this perfect human being, but I was always conscious of myself, right? So if I said I can do this, if you told me, Corey, I need this back Tuesday by 4 p.m., that was what I mean, 4:15 wasn't an option for me. Like, it was always like, this is what I have to do, and this is how I have to figure out to do it. And, I didn't realize that was, or maybe I wasn't as, not that I didn't realize it, I just wasn't as conscious that was building trust. I thought that was just me doing what I ought to be doing, and everyone does that. So, it was awesome. And I learned more the hard way as I got higher up.
Yeah.
To notice that people actually don't do those things. They don't do what's required of them, and they're always figuring out ways to get around things. So
Yep. Shortcuts.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of discipline, right? It takes a lot of discipline to make sure that, if somebody tells you 4 o'clock, it's there 3:45 on the desk, right? It's
right.
Yourself and knowing what you're capable of, and that critical thinking and making it happen, and that creative thinking.
Yes.
Right? Putting all of that into play to make that hard deadline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it became exciting. It became exciting for me. Like whereas before I would be nervous if I didn't know, or if something seemed like too hard, it became exciting for me to figure these things out. And because the door was always open for me to ask questions, and I wasn't just immediately scolded because I didn't know, it was exciting for me to figure it out. So
So pioneering became exciting for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
You know, I'm
Right.
actually hearing what I call the 3 C's, which is this combination of creativity, um, enjoying a good challenge, and then this endless curiosity that you have, all wrapped up in a strong character that was trustworthy, right? So it's really 4 C's.
Yeah.
Character being kind of the overarching umbrella. Okay, so take us forward. So you became, chief of staff, executive assistant. That trust continued. Your roles kept getting progressively filled with more responsibility and more challenges. At what point did you say to yourself, I think I'll own my own business? I mean, you're already having this successful career. Why make a shift?
There was this I worked for the CEO. The guy's name was David, right? He was a very cut and dry person, right? Like, so he didn't have a lot of EQ, I would say, but just tactically, he was very much on point, right? So he was one of the harder CEOs that I've ever worked with, because in business, everything's not black and white, right? Sometimes you have to make concessions for, you work with people. There are deadlines that sometimes just cannot be met. Like, you have to be flexible. You have to be able to go with the flow. And I remember one time he had asked me to do something, and he was like, I need this done right away, right? And he had forgotten to give me a key point, a key piece of information that I didn't even know that I needed at that point. So I'm working away with it, and I came back to him with what I thought was a complete task, and he was like, "Wait a minute, you didn't do XYZ?" And I was like, "No, I didn't know that's what you needed." And he was like, "Well, why didn't you come and ask me? Why didn't you do this?" And I didn't have an answer for him, and I remember being almost devastated, because I was like, well, I did what you asked me to do. You didn't give me this information, and maybe I should have known, but how would I have known? And it really bothered me.
Yeah.
And from that point on, our relationship was very strained, because he was also the type of person where because he was so tactically oriented and so black and white, that if something went wrong, he didn't trust you to take care of anything anymore. So he always, since that moment, he micromanaged me. He would say things that I thought was very curt and unnecessary. And he just, again, didn't have the emotional intelligence, didn't have the people skills. So, after then, I started thinking, like, I had so much respect for people that I worked for, because I thought, they had all the answers, and they were these big bosses, and were making all this money and had all these employees. So of course they were there because they had they had everything together, right? They knew how to handle people and groups and stuff, but he absolutely didn't. And so I ended up, for a couple of different reasons, getting fired from that position, and that tore me up. I had never been fired before. And so I was thinking about it, and some of my other coworkers I kept in touch with, and they were just like, you know what, we're so sorry that you left. We loved working with you. It was always, great working with you day to day. And I started realizing that business is so much more than, making money or doing these things perfectly. It's really emotional intelligence, and it's really connecting with people. And I was like, that's what I want to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's who I want to be. Like, I want to be able to lead a company, build a brand, and build on vision, but connect with people in a unique way. So that started my venture into looking into businesses. I always kind of kept that with me. Getting fired is not something you forget. So after that, I was like, I want to open my own business. I didn't know in what, doing what, or how. But that is the point for me that sparked the interest.
That was the pivotal point.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's almost like God arranged that.
Well, I believe he does everything. So
Yeah, I think he did. I think
yeah.
he said, girl, I got something else for you.
Right.
And you're gonna keep doing this if I don't get you out. So
Right. I would have. That's absolutely true.
But it's something about always being on point, and then suddenly there's someone who not only takes you off point, but then believes that you are off point. And it kind of brings out this internal drive, like, hey, wait a minute, not, this is one person, but I'm going to prove it to myself, or I know who I am deep inside. I'm going to do this for myself. And when I get there, I'm going to empower people.
Well, I wish that was the case for me. I actually, once I got fired, I completely went on this downward spiral. It was horrible for me. And the next boss that I had after that, she was actually worse. They likened her to the Devil Wears Prada. And
Okay.
It was horrible, but it was exactly what I needed, right? I worked under these people who had no idea how to connect with anyone, but knew numbers and knew how to bring in boatloads of money to the company, but were horrible to, on a personal level. So I really was like, it was like trial by fire, and really sharpened, it buffered me, right? Whereas before, where I thought I was doing all these things perfect and I got all this positive feedback, I got nothing but negative feedback for almost a full year. So it really it tempered me and gave me a little bit of perspective. So
Interesting.
it really is interesting. So that pivotal moment had you then look at other opportunities. Yes, it was devastating, blah, 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 but you still kept an open mind to where's the next place for me. So tell us the process you went through to ultimately decide that a pillar to post was the perfect fit for you.
Well, like I said, I had been looking into franchises before, because the learning curve for working for someone else to working for yourself is very steep. And it just would have taken me so much longer to build something from the ground up. Not that it's impossible, it would have taken a long time. And I also love working with people. So having other teammates, other franchisees that I can work with was always intriguing to me. So I literally Googled best franchise of 2020, and Pillar to Post came up, and I was like, what is this? Home inspection? Never really thought of that. I've had home inspections on my own properties and didn't really understand the reports or anything. And I was just like, who would ever think of home inspection? Like, I don't. So I started researching it more, and I met with Dan Stewart, the CEO, and he's a lovely, very down-to-earth guy, and piqued my interest even more. And there's not a lot of women, if any, really, in home inspection, even fewer women of color. So I was like, wow, that's a really great opportunity. And Pillar to Post has everything. It's the integrity of the brand. It's the camaraderie among the franchisees. It's the technology that we use. It's really the price point of entry worked for me at that time as well too. So it all kind of came together, and that's how I made my decision to come to Pillar to Post.
Yeah, I love Dan, by the way, and his team. I agree. It's a wonderful concept. I think it's a great fit for you. It is interesting that basically you just typed in.
Just Google, yeah.
There it is. But what was fascinating, and I think this goes back to a lot of what we've talked about, you didn't say no to something so out of the box, this idea of going in a male-dominated space, home inspection. Who would have thought? You were open to opportunity, and at least stepped into the research process to see if it was right. You didn't say home inspection. That doesn't sound. You you were open-minded about that. And I think that's an important part for anyone considering going into business, to have not only an open mind, but to realize there are many opportunities, some that are going to be a good fit and some that are not going to be a good fit.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I have a great village, so I wouldn't say that the courage was there from the onset, but I, spoke to people that I trust. And again, from my background and working in different industries, I've seen high profile people just figure things out. So that gave me a lot of courage as well. So it wasn't just on my own.
Corey, you said a couple of things in our pre-conversation that really intrigued me. And one of them was this concept of listening to the conversations of the world. And then the second one was about making yourself 1% better each day. Can you expand upon that? Because I think those are two extremely critical points that our audience would love to hear about.
Sure. I was mentioning I worked with the CEO, Ryan Simonetti, the founder of Convene. And one of the things that he always used to say is make yourself 1% better every day, right? So that really stuck with me for one reason or another. And it made me really live presently, day to day, in the moment. So really, I focus on not necessarily who I want to be 10 years from now, but like, who am I right now in the moment? Like, am I really invested in the people that I'm talking to, the people that I'm serving? Am I really serving them, or am I just serving me vicariously by, asking what they want and really just serving my own needs? So I really focus on being present as much as I can, so that when opportunities present themselves, I mentioned before, opportunities don't scream at you all the time. They very often whisper, or they'll present themselves in like a, hey, by the way, conversation, or, hey, I just kind of saw this, or I Googled best franchise 2020, and these things will pop up. But if you're not present in the moment, if you're not really invested in what it is that you're doing presently, you can miss them. And very often you do. So my focus is to be 1% better every day. And Lord willing, that will make me the best version of me 10 years, 5 years from now.
Love that.
I love it. So again, it's kind of that duality here, which is to be fully and completely present with whomever we're in relationship with, whether it's a customer that we're serving, an employee we're working with, our spouses. It's being fully engaged, that emotional and social intelligence that you're so beautiful at. And then the second part of that is becoming 1% better each day, which requires a couple of things. One is understanding who we are right now, right? That here's my strengths, here's my weaknesses, I could do this better. So you can make those incremental changes. So having an accurate assessment of ourselves, and the dedication, the commitment, the self-discipline that your mother taught you and you continued to become 1% better, 1% better, 1% better. That's unbelievable. That's fabulous.
Yeah, it's always taking inventory, right? Because we're all we all have our blind spots, but people, everything, situations will tell you exactly where your blind spots are if you're paying attention. So always take an inventory every day. Like, hey, what am I doing to affect someone else's life? Like, what am I actually paying attention to right now? Where's my focus? Where's my time being spent? So all of those things are necessary, really, to make any kind of change.
That's good stuff. Good stuff.
It is good stuff. Tracy and Corey, I'm thinking of just those two things, right? Just this 1% better and fully present. Not only does that help us, but it helps others. And I think each of us has our own challenges within that. I'm an A-type personality. I live in the future. And I cannot tell you how many mistakes, Corey, I have made in the present, because I'm out in the future living some bodacious life that isn't real yet, because I haven't been fully present or acknowledging those opportunities or focus on what I can do a little bit better. I'm already out there. And so this to me is incredible advice, that if we work on just 1% every day, and we are fully present in all of our decisions and all of our interactions, who knows what God has for us 10 years from now. We don't have to focus on creating that, just 1%, 1%.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Which is why that advice given to me by Ryan stuck with me. And, I try to remember that every day.
Yeah. So, question. If you had advice for someone listening in today that dropped in on this conversation, a potential business owner, what advice, besides what you've already given us, would you share with them when they're considering franchising and business ownership?
Just in business in general, it is a marathon, right? And it's about consistency. And I would say 100% in the beginning, find a process that works, that's well informed by those who have done it before you, those who are in it with you, and consistently perform on that, whether times are good or bad. There are, all of us know in going in business that things will be difficult at times. And so when we hit a situation that's really kind of difficult, we get through it. We're like, oh, okay, yeah, business is hard. But I made it through that. And you kind of are just moving from situationally through business. But if you have if you're able to zoom out a little bit and say, hey, whether things are going really well or if they're going really poorly, I have a system, right? And I'm hammering away at that system, and I'm constantly perfecting that system. And my customers, they know they can rely on me to check up on them in 24 hours after the service is provided. Or my clients know that, if they work with me 3 times, that I've sent them a thank you card or a thank you note, or, I'm constantly touching base with this person, or whatever your system is. The confidence comes in knowing that you're working that, which is the great thing about franchises, because there's a structure there already, right? And you can only improve on that, and you can work harder to promote that brand that's already there. But that is the sweet spot. Just whether times are good or bad, it's not necessarily gearing yourself up to weather the next storm, but just zooming out and being like, whether it's a great day or a horrible day, I know what I'm doing because I'm following this system.
Wow.
So it's a marathon, not a sprint to the next situation. So
Awesome. Where can our listeners find you?
Well, I am based in Woodland Hills, but you can find me, and I service all of LA County, but you can find me on Instagram. I can send my Instagram tag and stuff on LinkedIn, on my website, pillartopost.com/Coree Rivers. You can find me there as well. And yeah.
Terrific.
Perfect. Coree, we so appreciate your wisdom. Tracy, I'm going to start just opening OneNote and taking notes, because you were just so full of wisdom that really makes a difference. And you ended with a beautiful one, also, this consistency. So those of you listening in, I hope you took notes, or I know I'm going to go back and listen to this again. So I just want to say thank you, Coree, because now I have 5 C's, right? Including the consistency and the character and the curiosity, all of these things that kind of encompass who you are. And I'm really looking forward to seeing who you become in 5 years. So thanks again for making time for us.
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. It's wonderful. I'm not as eloquent speaking on line, so I felt a little awkward. I hope it didn't translate
No,
awkward. But
fabulous.
thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure speaking with you both.
Thank you.
So those of you listening in today to the Franchise Woman podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships are forged, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week for another episode.
Bye-bye.